Archaeologists believe he's found the site of Jesus' trial by Pontius Pilate. Another picture in the same article says this room was a former Ottoman prison known as Kishle in the Jerusalem's Old City, where layers of ancient history were uncovered. Among the public records found within this hall is a document they now call the Gospel of Nicodemus. It used to be called the Acts of Pontius Pilate. It's clear from the introduction what the person compiling the book thought. Although the Gospel is, by some among the learned, supposed to have been really written by Nicodemus, who became a disciple of Jesus Christ and conversed with him, others conjecture that it was a forgery towards the close of the 3rd century by some zealous believer who, observing that there had been appeals made by the Christians of the former age to the Acts of Pilate, but that such acts could not be produced, imagined it would be of service to Christianity to fabricate and publish this gospel, as it would both confirm the Christians under persecution and convince the heathens of the truth of the Christian religion. So let's look at what it says. The account of the crucifixion begins this way. Then Jesus went out of the hall, and the 2 thieves with him. And when they came to the place which is called Golgotha, they stripped him of his raiment, and girt him about with a linen cloth, and put a crown of thorns upon his head, and put a reed in his hand. And in like manner did they to the 2 thieves who were crucified with him, Demas on his right hand, and Justus on his left. But Jesus said, My Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they divided his garments, and upon his vesture they cast lots. The people in the meantime stood by, and the chief priests and elders of the Jews mocked him, saying, He saved others, let him now save himself if he can. If he be the Son of God, let him now come down from the cross. The soldiers also mocked him, and taking vinegar and gall, offered it to him to drink, and said to him, If thou art King of the Jews, deliver thyself. Then Longinus, a certain soldier, taking a spear, pierced his side, and presently there came forth blood and water. And Pilate wrote the title upon the cross in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, the letters V-I-Z. This is the King of the Jews. But one of the 2 thieves who were crucified with Jesus, whose name was Justus, said to Jesus, If thou art the Christ, deliver thyself and us. But the thief who was crucified on his right hand, whose name was Demas, answering, rebuked him and said, Dost not thou fear God, who art condemned to this punishment? We indeed receive rightly and justly the demerit of our actions, but this Jesus, what evil hath he done? After this groaning, he said to Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. Jesus answering said to him, Verily I say unto thee, that this day thou shalt be with me in paradise. And it was about the 6th hour, and darkness was upon the face of the whole earth until the 9th hour. And while the sun was eclipsed, behold, the veil of the temple was rent from the top to the bottom, and the rocks also were rent, and the graves opened, and many bodies of saints which slept arose. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Hail, Hail, lama sabachthani, which being interpreted is, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And after these things Jesus said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said this, he gave up the ghost. But when the centurion saw that Jesus, thus crying out, gave up the ghost, he glorified God and said, Of a truth, this was a just man. And all the people who stood by were exceedingly troubled at the sight, and reflecting upon what had passed, smote upon their breasts, and then returned to the city of Jerusalem. The centurion went to the governor and related to him all that had passed. And when he had heard all these things, he was exceedingly sorrowful. And calling the Jews together, said to them, Have ye seen the miracle of the sun's eclipse, and the other things which came to pass while Jesus was dying? Which when the Jews heard, they answered to the governor, The eclipse of the sun happened according to its usual custom. But all those who were the acquaintance of Christ stood at a distance, as did the women who had followed Jesus from Galilee, observing all these things. And behold, a certain man of Arimathea named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus, but not openly so, for fear of the Jews, came to the governor and entreated the governor that he would give him leave to take away the body of Jesus from the cross. And the governor gave him leave. And Nicodemus came, bringing with him a mixture of myrrh and aloes and about 100-pound weight. And they took down Jesus from the cross with tears and bound him with linen cloth and spices, according to the custom of burying among the Jews, and placed him in a new tomb which Joseph had built and caused to be cut out of a rock, which never any man had been put. And they rolled a great stone to the door of the sepulchre. When the unjust Jews heard that Joseph had begged and buried the body of Jesus, they sought after Nicodemus and those 15 men who had testified before the governor that Jesus was not born through fornication, and other good persons who had shown any good actions towards him. But when they all concealed themselves through fear of the Jews, Nicodemus alone shewed himself to them and said, "How can such persons as these enter into the synagogue?" The Jews answered him, "But how durst thou enter into the synagogue, who wast a confederate with Christ? Let thy lot be along with him in the other world." Nicodemus answered, "Amen, so may it be, that I may have my lot with him in his kingdom." In like manner Joseph, when he came to the Jews, said to them, "Why are ye angry with me for desiring the body of Jesus of Pilate? Behold, I have put him in my tomb and wrapped him up in clean linen and put a stone at the door of the sepulchre. I have acted rightly towards him, but ye have acted unjustly, aghast that just person, in crucifying him, giving him vinegar to drink, crowning him with thorns, tearing his body with whips, and prayed down the guilt of his blood upon you." The Jews at the hearing of this were disquieted and troubled, and they seized Joseph and commanded him to be put in custody before the Sabbath, and kept there till the Sabbath was over. And they said to him, "Make confession, for at this time it is not lawful to do thee any harm till the first day of the week come. But we know that thou wilt not be thought worthy of a burial, but we will give thy flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the earth." Joseph answered, "That speech is like the speech of proud Goliath, who reproached the living God in speaking against David. But ye scribes and doctors know that God saith by the prophet, Vengeance is mine, and I will repay to you evil equal to that which ye have threatened to me. The God whom you have hanged upon the cross is able to deliver me out of your hands. All your wickedness will return upon you." For the governor, when he washed his hands, said, "I am clear from the blood of this just person." But ye answered and cried out, "His blood be upon us and our children. According as ye have said, may ye perish forever." The elders of the Jews, hearing these words, were exceedingly enraged, and seizing Joseph, they put him into a chamber where there was no window. They fastened the door and put a seal upon the lock. And Annas and Caiaphas placed a guard upon it, and took counsel with the priests and Levites, that they should all meet after the Sabbath, and they contrived to what death they should put Joseph. When they had done this, the rulers, Annas and Caiaphas, ordered Joseph to be brought forth. And there is a side note that says, in this place there's a portion of the gospel lost or omitted, which cannot be supplied. When all the assembly heard this, they admired and were astonished, because they found the same seal upon the lock of the chamber, and could not find Joseph. Then Annas and Caiaphas went forth, and while they were all admiring at Joseph's being gone, behold, one of the soldiers who kept the sepulchre of Jesus spake in the assembly, that while they were guarding the sepulchre of Jesus, there was an earthquake, and we saw an angel of God roll away the stone of the sepulchre and sit upon it. And his countenance was like lightning, and his garment like snow. And we became through fear like persons dead. And we heard an angel saying to the women at the sepulchre of Jesus, "Do not fear. I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is risen as he foretold. Come and see the place where he was laid, and go presently and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead. And he will go before you into Galilee. There ye shall see him as he told you." Then the Jews called together all the soldiers who kept the sepulchre of Jesus, and said to them, "Who are these women to whom the angel spoke? Why did ye not seize them? The soldiers answered and said, We know not whom the women were. Besides, we became as dead persons through fear, and how could we seize these women? The Jews said to them, As the Lord liveth, we do not believe you. The soldiers answering said to the Jews, When ye saw and heard Jesus working so many miracles and did not believe him, how should ye believe us? Ye well said, As the Lord liveth, for the Lord truly does live. We have heard that ye shut up Joseph, who buried the body of Jesus in a chamber under a lock which was sealed, and when ye opened it, found him not there. Do ye then produce Joseph, whom ye put under guard in the chamber, and we will produce Jesus, whom we guarded in the sepulchre. The Jews answered and said, We will produce Joseph. Do ye produce Jesus? But Joseph is in his own city of Arimathea. The soldiers replied, If Joseph be in Arimathea and Jesus in Galilee, we heard the angel inform the women. The Jews, hearing this, were afraid and said among themselves, If by any means these things should become public, then everybody will believe in Jesus. Then they gathered a large sum of money and gave it to the soldiers, saying, Do ye tell the people that the disciples of Jesus came in the night when ye were asleep and stole away the body of Jesus? And if Pilate the governor should hear of this, we will satisfy him and secure you. The soldiers accordingly took the money and said as they were instructed by the Jews, and their report was spread abroad among the people. But a certain priest, Phinehas, Ada, a schoolmaster, and a Levite named Aggeus, they three came from Galilee to Jerusalem, and told the chief priests and all who were in the synagogue, saying, We have seen Jesus, whom ye crucified, talking with his 11 disciples, and sitting in the midst of them in Mount Olivet, and saying to them, Go forth into the whole world, preach the gospel to all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. And whosoever shall believe and be baptized shall be saved. And when he said these things to his disciples, we saw him ascending up to heaven. When the chief priests, the elders, and the Levites heard these things, they said to these three men, Give glory to the God of Israel, and make confession to him, whether those things are true which ye say ye have seen and heard. They answering said, As the Lord of our fathers liveth, the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, according as we heard Jesus talking with his disciples, and according as we saw him ascending up to heaven, so we have related the truth to you. And the three men farther answered and said, adding these words, If we should not own the words which we heard Jesus speak, and that we saw him ascending into heaven, we should be guilty of sin. Then the chief priests immediately rose up, and holding the book of the law in their hands, conjured these men, saying, Ye shall no more hereafter declare these things which ye have spoken concerning Jesus. And they gave them a large sum of money, and sent other persons along with them, who should conduct them to their own country, that they might not by any means make any stay at Jerusalem. Then the Jews did assemble all together, and having expressed the most lamentable concern, said, What is this extraordinary thing which is come to pass in Jerusalem? But Annas and Caiaphas comforted them, saying, Why should we believe the soldiers who guarded the sepulchre of Jesus, in telling us that an angel rolled away the stone from the door of the sepulchre? Perhaps his own disciples told them this, and gave them money that they should say so, and they themselves took away the body of Jesus. Besides, consider this, that there is no credit to be given to foreigners, because they also took a large sum of us, and they have declared to us according to the instructions which we gave them. They must either be faithful to us or to the disciples of Jesus. In this version, we are seeing names that we're not used to seeing in our Bibles. One of those names is Demas, the thief on the cross who was repentant. His name means sunset. That would be an appropriate description of who he is, receiving salvation at the sunset of his life in those last moments. The name Justus means complain or moan, which was also accurate. According to legend, this is the crypt of Joseph of Arimathea at Glastonbury Abbey. It appears after the resurrection of Christ, Joseph of Arimathea went on to Britain to spread the gospel and was credited with building many churches. Tradition also has that this is the site of the tomb of King Arthur and Guinevere. I hope you enjoyed this account. I found it very fascinating.